Hello, my friends. Here's the question of the day. Why planning rarely survives the first contact with reality? People love to say that planning never survives the first contact with reality. But here's the uncomfortable truth. When a plan dies immediately, most of the time the problem isn't reality. The problem is the plan. Welcome, my friends. I'm Fred. Here we talk about investment, business, real life, and training, always from my personal perspective. So, today's question is simple but deep. Why does planning rarely survive the first contact with reality? Does it really rarely survive? Or are we just confusing bad planning with reality being tough? Let's be honest. If a plan collapses the moment it touches reality, one of two things happen. Either the person who made the plan had no real knowledge, or the plan was made by someone completely disconnected from reality. Because when planning is done properly, something interesting happens. Yes, reality is harder, especially here in Brazil. Yes, things are worse than expected. Yes, problems appear. But the plan doesn't die immediately. It survives, it resists, it adapts. Reality is hard, but not random. Reality is tough. That's true. But reality is not chaos without rules. Good planning already assumes friction, delays, mistakes, higher costs, lower margins. A serious plan is never based on optimism alone. It's based on margins of safety, buffers, worst case scenarios. So, when people say that planning never works, what they usually mean is this: my expectations were unrealistic. Let me give you a real example. More than 20 years ago, I had a small pulley manufacturing factory. I planned it, I studied, I didn't just improvise. Did it work forever? No, I was young. Did it fail immediately? Also, no. It survived 3 to 4 years. That means the plan did survive contact with reality, for a while at least. Eventually, I went broke. Alright, I had debt. I had to sell machinery. It was painful. But notice something important. It wasn't the first contact with reality that killed the business. It was accumulated pressure over time. And that's very different. Now, compare that with another case. A mechanical shop I planned and opened around 20 years ago. That business is still alive today. Same country, same reality, same economy. So, what changed? Not reality, exception, execution, scale, and alignment with the market. This alone proves something important. Planning can survive reality when it's done with seriousness. Let's make something very clear here. Planning helps a lot. Anyone who says otherwise has never built anything real. Planning helps you to understand the costs, to understand the margins, to organize cash flow, price products correctly, avoid obvious mistakes. The problem is not planning. The problem is planning without humility. I recently watched a video of a small business owner who runs a burger restaurant here in Brazil. Nothing fancy, nothing viral. The guy made about 200,000 reais in revenue in a year, not per month, per year. He runs the business with his brother. And that means they barely earn what a regular employee earns. And you know what? I became a fan of the guy. Why? Because he explained everything: gross revenue, net profit, real profit, pricing, margins. He said they started using his mother's cookware. Think about that. They gave up their own salary to reinvest in the business. That's not stupidity. That's discipline and realism. That man understands planning. And and if nothing crazy happens, I honestly believe he'll go far. He explained something very interesting. If the raw material of a burger costs 10 reais, for example, you can't sell it for 12 or 13 and expect to survive. To end up with 15 to 20% real profit, you often need to sell it for double the cost. Why? Because then about 50% of the price goes to fixed costs: rent, labor, taxes, utilities. That's planning grounded in reality, not dreams, not Instagram entrepreneurship. So, now let's answer the real question: why do most businesses fail? Because many of them are started by adventurers, not planners. People ignore the local market, the purchasing power, culture, the basic math. Let me give you a brutal example. A Starbucks opened in a small city near mine, close to Belo Horizonte, here in Brazil. The moment I saw it, I thought, this will not work. And it didn't. The store closed. They were open for something like a year. And why is that? Because the average Brazilian, unfortunately, cannot afford a 20 reais coffee on a regular basis. I don't care how big the brand is. I don't care how global the company is. Local reality matters. So I ask you, what kind of planning allowed that store to open there? Who was disconnected from the reality? The franchisor or the franchisee? The expansion the expansion team, someone failed to do the basic planning. And this is Starbucks, not a small amateur business. People often think, who am I to question a giant company like Starbucks? But big companies also suffer from bad incentives, cheap capital, pressure to expand, lack of local knowledge. Size does not guarantee intelligence. Sometimes it just hides stupidity longer. So let's me be precise. When people say planning doesn't survive reality, what they actually mean is bad planning doesn't survive reality. Good planning doesn't guarantee success, doesn't eliminate risk, but it allows you to fight reality for a long time, and it allows you to adapt, to correct the course, to survive longer. And sometimes that's all you need. A good a good plan is not rigid. It's a starting framework, not a prison. You can change it Reality will force changes. Suppliers change, demand change, costs change. The entrepreneur who survives is not the one with the perfect plan, but the one who adjusts without panicking. So, why does planning rarely survive the first contact with reality? Because most plans are made without realism. Many entrepreneurs ignore basic constraints, and too many people confuse optimism with strategy. Good planning doesn't collapse on day one, it bends, it adapts, it fights reality for a while. Bad planning dies instantly. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Do you believe planning helps, or do you think reality always wins? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. I read all of them. Thank you for watching. See you, my friends, in the next video.